And welcome to a special capital tour coming to you from the beaches of Mombasa. That's right, the Sarova White Sands to be precise. And a very important convention taking part right here at Sarova entitled Governance, Leadership and Management, organized by, among others, the Kenya Institute of Management, the United Nations Development Program and several other organizations. And yes, a whole host of dignitaries and leaders right here to discuss something that a lot of critics and analysts say is lacking in Africa: leadership and governance. So, kicking off the week is a man who, for lack of a better word, a true African leader. Yes, a reluctant leader at that, because way back in 1976, he reluctantly agreed to be the next head of state of the Federal Republic of Nigeria after the military head of state was assassinated. He gave up power 3 years later, the first time ever for the military to give up power to a civilian government. For the next 20 years, he didn't give up. He was out there pushing for democracy and governance, in a spate of jail during the time of Sani Abacha, and then in 1999, when the military gave over to a civilian government, he once again reluctantly agreed to be president. And yes, he served his 2 terms. And even though he walked away from the presidency, he's still as active today. If there's one man who knows this continent inside out, it is my guest today, folks. He's been on the bench before, and what a thrill it is to have him once again. He is the patron of this convention. So folks, sit back and listen to the words of one former Nigerian President, Olusegun Obasanjo. I forgot to mention, Baba, I call you my Baba. My Baba, always.
Well, you know, whenever I see you, I treat you like a naughty child.
Baba, welcome to Kenya once again.
Thank you very
It's good
much.
to see you.
It's always a pleasure to be here.
Last time you were on the bench, Baba, it was about a year or so ago. Africa has changed in the last year incredibly. The entire landscape of North Africa, Baba, has changed forever. Maybe not for the better in some parts. Your thoughts, Baba? These changes? This Arab Spring has been quite dramatic.
Yeah, it was unexpected by most people, but the seed was always there. People were looking at the facade. Oh, how is Tunisia doing? Oh, how is Egypt doing? Oh, President Mubarak is the one to be consulted by the Western world on issues of the Arab world, on issues of the Israeli, Palestine. But what people do not take note of is the underlying issue of youth restiveness, which was smoldering. Now, even at that time, many of these youth that were unemployed or grossly underemployed were living in the in the cemetery in Egypt. Now, that should have pointed to some people that there were things that were not right. Now, so I have analyzed this youth unemployment and dissatisfaction, inability to have fulfillment in their life as the main cause.
Yeah. Then how come it hasn't happened anywhere else in that, further south of the Sahara?
Yeah, well, we mustn't be. It's not Uhuru yet for us in Africa south of Sahara, because the ingredients are even worse for us. And the other day I was analyzing, and the analysis, which is essentially based on Nigeria's situation that I know very well. It's almost applicable to, or is applicable to almost all other African countries south of Sahara. There are those I call area boys. You will have heard that in Nigeria. There are those boys who live in Lagos under the bridge. The boys who dropped out in primary school. Some may not even have spent more than 2 or 3 years in primary school. They are on drug. They had no job, and they are not even employable, which is another great problem. Then you have those who either dropped out in the secondary school or finished secondary education but had no job and are just going about. I call them Yahoo boys because they have access to internet and they are there. And the third group are those that even went to university. Some of them even have master's degree.
And are unemployed.
And unemployed.
And angry.
I call them Blackberry boys. They are unemployed. They have no hope of employment. They are angry. They are unfulfilled. Now, if you have these three groups, the spearhead will be the area boys, because with drug they will they will go into anything. Anything. The next group will be the Yahoo boys, and the Blackberry boys will be the one directing behind. If that happens, it will not be African spring like Arab spring. It will be African winter. You know, we don't have winter normally in Africa. So when you have winter in Africa, it must be a great disaster.
It will be terrible. It will be terrible. And is that why you're spearheading? That's why you're the patron of something like this? Because the theme for this convention is governance, leadership, and management.
Yeah, well, not only am I just believe that we must, all of us, must be job creators, but particularly the youth. Let me give you an example of my own country. At the moment, we have a minimum of 120 universities. When you add polytechnics, colleges of education, and other tertiary institutions, we have almost 300 of them. If only 2,500 of the graduates are coming from each of these institutions every year, you are talking of almost 800,000 graduates, between 700,000 and 800,000 graduates.
A year?
A year.
Who need jobs?
Who need jobs? And what jobs are you going to put them? Take the oil. How much our oil sector is capital intensive and technology intensive. How much can it employ? Take liquefied natural gas, LNG. We and our partners have put over $30 billion in it. It doesn't employ more than 1,000 people. Capital intensive, technology intensive, but not employment generator.
Yes.
So where do we have to go? We have to go to agro-business. And you know, that's why I'm there.
And you're speaking from experience because you're a farmer.
I'm a farmer. And there is nothing that can give our youth the type of employment to be generated for them to have fulfillment, to have a bit of decent life, to be able to feel that they are human,
Yeah.
because they are working to earn a living, except in the area of agro business.
Yes. Mr. President, Thabo Mbeki said in his opening remarks that Africa stands to lose the fight in the second half, or in the second decade of this 21st century. Those are some profound words,
Yes.
Mr. President. Profound.
Yeah, yes. Well, people will say a conference like this, oh, it's a talking shop. It's not a talking shop. Here last year, when I was here, I talk about our universities, not just focusing on training job seekers. They should also go into training job creators. About 2 weeks after I made that statement, the distinguished president of this country took up the same theme. That, look, what can we do to generate and create the jobs that will give fulfillment to our people? And as a result of that, universities in this country are already looking at their curriculum.
Is there hope?
So what President Thabo Mbeki is saying is simply this. Now, if you fold your hands and you say, oh yes, you will claim the second decade, you are deceiving yourself. The second decade can only be claimed if you work for it. Now, I believe that if we work for it, of course, it is possible. Why? Let me give you a couple of examples. Until 6 years ago, Malawi was a major importer of grains. Today, Malawi is an exporter.
Yes. They even had a famine in 2005, remember?
Okay. All right. Today, they are now feeding the countries that have famines. So it is possible. What Malawi story tells us is that, yes, it can be done. And if it can be done for Malawi, it can be done for Somalia, it can be done for Eritrea, it can be done for Kenya, it can be done for all African countries. Sometime when I was president of Nigeria, with President John Kufuor of Ghana, we were going to Guinea-Bissau. As we were about to land, President Kufuor looked down from the window of the aircraft and saw everything green and lush. And he said to me, my brother, this country should not be poor. And nobody should go hungry in this country. I said, tell me, which African country should be poor? Or in which African country should anybody go hungry? That's the position.
Yes.
But when we got into the hotel in Guinea-Bissau that day, what did we have? We have imported apple,
Yes.
and imported grapes. This is in a country where anything you put on the ground will grow. We were not served pawpaw, we were not served banana, we were not served guava, we were not served mango, we were not served any tropical fruit.
Just imported.
And this is a country where people, they have land, they have people, but the two are not
Correct. And the priorities are wrong.
wrong. Issue again, why is that? Leadership.
Leadership. Leadership.
Leadership.
Can we turn that around, Mr. President? Is it possible to turn around? Because you guys, when you started this African Renaissance, yourself, President Mbeki, President Bouteflika, President Wade, you birthed the African Renaissance. You had the vision.
And, the three of us, particularly President Bouteflika, President Thabo Mbeki, and myself, we practicalized what we preached. And the effect was booming economy in South Africa. The effect was improvement in agriculture and the economy in Nigeria. The effect in Nigeria was that we were able to negotiate debt relief. The effect was Nigeria went from $3.7 billion reserve to $45 billion reserve in a space of 8 years. Yes. By the time I was leaving. Yes. The effect was that we paid, when I was there, we owed $34 billion. We paid $12 billion, about almost $20 billion was written off. I left government with the debt of Nigeria not more than $2 billion. Now, you see, so it can be done.
Can be done.
And we moved cocoa production from 150,000 metric tons to 400,000 metric tons between 2003 and 2007. So it can be done. Yes. Well, President Bouteflika was doing similarly, in spite of the problem of insurgency he had, was doing wonderfully well in his country. So what NEPAD and those of us who are the initiator of NEPAD have proved is that it can be done. With the right leadership, it can be done. Motivation, it can be done. Direction, it can be done. Guidance, it can be done. Yes. Monitoring, it can be done. It just means that you have to work for it.
Correct. Mr. President, I want to talk more about that after the break. I also want to talk about the fact that, remember, Nigeria used to import everything in terms of food. Now you have farmers in Nigeria growing food.
Not enough. Still not enough.
But it's happening.
It's happening.
And it could never, Africans would never have envisioned that happening in Nigeria. Yeah. Also, is there still hope? Remember, you all said that the 21st century still belongs to Africa. Is there still hope?
Oh, yeah.
Baba's on the bench by the beach, folks. Yes, it's a special week here in Mombasa, the Sarova White Sands. And yes, we're talking to people who know a thing or two about leadership, trying to turn this continent around, folks. And who better than Baba himself, former Nigerian President Olusegun Obasanjo. Do not even think of going away. The bench by the beach is back in a moment. And welcome back to Capital Talk. It's only the beginning of the week, folks, and I tell you, the whole week is going to be incredible because we're here in Mombasa by the beach at the Sarova White Sands. And yes, a convention headed by the Kenya Institute of Management and UNDP and others. And yes, bringing together a whole host of dignitaries and leaders to talk about leadership, governance, management, things that are, yes, lacking for the most part in Africa. Can we turn them around? Can the 21st century be Africa's? Let's talk to Baba himself, who knows a thing or two about leadership, the only military head of state to give up power, and then 20 years later, elected in a full democracy. What a story! What a man! Sit back. That is a great story, Mr. President, because let's go back to 1976. General Murtala Muhammad assassinated. You reluctantly agreed to become head of state. Those were tough times, Mr. President. Tough times. And you still gave it up 3.5 years later.
Yeah. Now, because, you see, for me, one important aspect of leadership is that you must be a man of your word. If a leader cannot be trusted, then of what use is it? And whatever was done under Murtala, I was his number two. We did it together. Some people came to me and said, well, Murtala had gone. This is your own time. You can say you are going to start your own. I said, no. Murtala Obasanjo regime was one single regime. And so I did what I believe should be done. And as a result, I went away. I went into farming because I believe very much in farming. 20 years later, Nigerian people came to me and said, yes, the country is on a precipice. We need you.
And you were reluctant as well?
I was reluctant as well. But one day, what made me to give in? One day I was reading the Bible. I've said to them, how many presidents do you want to make out of me? I've just come out of prison. My family is in ruins. My domestic life is in ruins. My farm is in ruins. Even the civil society organization, Africa Leadership Forum that I had to move to Ghana because Abacha wanted to deal with them. So I was reading the Bible, and I was reading the book of Esther, where Mordecai was telling Esther to plead on behalf of her people, and saying, look, maybe because of this, that's why you came into the palace. And somebody had told me, in fact, 2 people had told me that Abacha swore that 3 of us will not come out of prison.
They tried to poison you?
Tried to poison me. Shehu Yaradua didn't come out of prison. MK Abiola didn't come out. I came out. It's not because of my goodness or because of my cleverness. It's the grace of God. So I then said to myself, well, maybe because of this. That's why God has spared my life. So if people say, come, let me go.
Yes.
And serve. So I went in to serve.
And you turned it around, Mr. President?
And I turned it around. Nigeria was a pariah state.
Nobody wanted to touch Nigeria?
Nobody wanted to touch Nigeria. Oh, it's like a leper.
Yes.
Now, that Nigeria then became darling of all countries. I went round. I have this a banker in my cabinet. He said anytime I talk about debt relief, he would chuckle inside himself, said, this man doesn't know what he's saying. How can I lend money? I say, banker, how can I lend somebody money? And he will come and tell me debt relief. I would drive him away. I believed in it, and it worked. It worked. Now, what made it work? We showed to the world that we meant business. Whatever we say, we meant it. We believe in reform, and we were carrying out those reforms. Now, so when you ask, can Africa claim the 21st century? Why not? If what I have told you, and you saw a bit of it, what we did in Nigeria, I talk about cocoa production, cassava. We moved from 30 million metric tons of production of cassava to 50 million metric tons. We were self-sufficient in vegetable oil. We were importing 2 million tons of rice every year. By the time I left, we reduced it to 500,000 tons. We were self-sufficient in food product. We started becoming a major producer of fish, both from the sea and from inland aquaculture. Now, these things were done. Education was given attention. We started contributory pension. We started health insurance, and people could now go out on retirement without any hitch at all about getting their retirement benefit. Now, all these were done. We moved the reserve from 3.7 to $45 billion. In addition, we left in what we call excess crude. That is the money realized from the amount which we peg we predicate our budget on, and the amount at which we sell the oil, we keep it.
Yes.
And that is what we call excess crude. We left over $22 billion of excess truth.
So if Nigeria can do it, Mr. President, Africa's most populous nation, if you guys can do it.
If we can do it without reversing,
Yes.
those who came after us reversed all this. Now that is another issue of leadership.
It's another challenge.
Another challenge, another issue of leadership. And those people, when they were coming, they were campaigning on the slogan of continuity. But when they came, they did not even discontinue, they reversed.
Yes. Does that frustrate you sometimes, Mr. President?
Not really, because I do believe that sooner or later, Africa will produce the caliber of leaders that will lead us continuously forward.
Are we going to be around for that, Mr. President?
I may or may not, but you will. I may or may not,
Yes.
but you will.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is God still a Nigerian?
Yes. Now, but you are doing a few things right here now.
Yes.
Your constitution is right, especially the provision you have made for women in your constitution.
Yes.
And I listened to Professor Lumumba today.
Yes.
What he's saying about corruption for all countries in Africa, including Kenya. If it's in another country, he will lose his job tomorrow.
Immediately.
Yeah. But I understand that your constitution doesn't allow that. So, but with these type of things that you are doing, I understand that God is now asking for a permanent visa
To Kenya.
to Kenya.
Baba.
But
Yes.
we will plead with him.
Yes. To stay in Nigeria.
To stay in Nigeria and increase his frequency of visit to Kenya.
At the end of the day, Baba, is there hope for this continent? Is there hope?
Yes, there is. You know, I'm an incurable optimist about what human beings can do. And human beings must not be underrated. Human beings have capacity for the worst and capacity for the best. Human beings have capacity for the worst and capacity for the best. And it has not been all doom in Africa. You have the outgoing chairman of the KIM Council today.
Yes.
Going back as an architect, he was telling all the history of Africa. Now, Africa, the Egyptians will not have built the pyramid without the knowledge of mathematics, because it wouldn't have worked. And now, the Portuguese, when they first got into Benin,
Yes.
Benin in Nigeria, the Benin city, they describe it as a street wider than anyone in Europe. This in the 14th or 15th century. Now, the people who did that are Africans. And as you heard today, he even said that an African got to America before
Columbus.
Before Columbus. And everybody laughed.
Yes.
Maybe there's an element of truth in that. Now, but what I am saying is that our progress in Africa has not been even. It has been, we go up, we go down, we go up, we go down. Now, we must do something and make us going up.
Yes.
Continually.
Yes.
That's what we have to do. And we will do that when leaders understand what leadership is, when they have the knowledge of the world in which we live, when they really have vision and sense of mission. Now, not leaders who only want to, they are interested in themselves and their kith and kin, whether relations or their villages or whatever. It must be leaders that are imbued with the spirit to get Africa up, to get their own nation up. Now look, if you, 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 you can see the type of thing that I have seen in agriculture and what is possible. Africa can feed the whole of the world. But today we cannot even feed ourselves. Look at what is happening in Somalia.
Yes. Northern Kenya.
And Northern Kenya.
Yes.
Shameful, disgraceful, pathetic. Why should anybody in Africa die of malnutrition or starvation?
In the 21st century.
In the 21st century. And as President Kufuor said, no African country should be poor.
None.
None.
We have no excuse.
No excuse. Now, somebody was telling me here today or yesterday that when he was chairman of a Greek Association of Kenya,
Yes.
they invited experts from Israel
Yes.
to come and teach them how to do
Farming.
dry land
Correct.
farming.
Yes.
Dry land farming. So when the experts have gone round, they came back and said, well, we went round, we couldn't find dry land anywhere.
No dry land.
No dry land. Because where they call dry land, they dug, and a few meters down, they found water. So the water that does not, because there's no year that there was no rain.
Correct.
In that area, the water flows into the ocean, but the one that does not flow into the ocean remains in the ground. What do you make of it?
It's our fault.
Our fault. So that's why in my speech today I say yes, we should create our youth into job creators,
Not job seekers.
not job seekers. They should become people who see not dry lands but wetlands, not marshy ground but farmland. And this is possible.
It will happen.
It will happen.
In my lifetime.
Yes, I'm sure it will happen in your lifetime. What you should be doing, my dear brother,
Yes.
is pray that it should happen in my lifetime too.
I pray for you every day, Baba. I pray for you every day. Nice to see you, Baba.
Nice to see you.
Congratulations. And
Thank you,
keep it
brother.
up. Keep
Thank
it
you,
up.
brother. Thank
Well
you,
done.
brother.
Well done.
Thank
Don't
you,
move. Don't move. Baba on the bench by the beach, folks. Wow. What a guest. And it's only Monday, folks. All this week, it's all about leadership, governance, and management here at the Sarova White Sands in Mombasa. And yes, we're getting lessons from the best of the best because they've been there, they've tasted, they've been at the top of the pitch. And yes, they have proved themselves and want to still give back to this continent, which they so believe in. You cannot find guests like President Olusegun Obasanjo anywhere else but right here on the bench, on the award-winning station, K24, where we are, yes, even though with Baba on the bench by the beach, we are still all Kenyan.
All the time. Thank you very much.
All this week, Capital Talk is recorded at the Sarova White Sands, Mombasa.